Program Office and Karen Foster, who's contracting to the, formerly of the Housing Project Office, DPO, contracting to the DPO at the moment.
Thank you.
Fiona is going to introduce the policy, but just to say that at the beginning there is a correction in item 4 on page 69 of your agenda. The last sentence should read that if AT decides to disallow the objection and proceed with the road stopping, the matter must be referred to the Environment Court.
Yes, I thought so. Yes. Can't make an appeal compulsory.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time today. The road exchange policy has been brought to the committee today from an approach from a couple of developers. Basically, the existing AT policy states that all developers will buy any stopped land, and that this stopped land will be at market value. They will also, with the new roads, vest in council the new roads. Where we're looking at urban environments, particularly in the brownfield example, and developments of scale, that can be significant costs to the land, of land for the developer. And they see this as double dipping. In consultation with DPO, Legal and AT, we put this policy together with some specific criteria to enable the right urban design outcomes in these potential projects where developers approach us on this matter. Is there anything else I should add there?
Mr. Chairman, I think that what the policy tries to do is recognise that the land occupied by road has a market value, and that in stopping that road and divesting it to a developer, there is a value associated with that, and the public benefit of the development needs to be greater than that value of the land before it is divested without and exchanged.
It also isn't a proposal to move away from the existing policy with regards to paying for land on all developments. It's only on significant developments that meet this criteria where we will be seeking to utilise this outcome.
Thank you. Happy to take questions, I'm sure. Members' queries on this one? Councillor Sayers, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you. Just want to be clear. When I read the paper, unformed roads I read as paper roads, and does it refer to anything else other than paper roads and unformed roads?
No, this is formed and unformed roads.
So the definition of an unformed road is a paper road, or does it include any other type of road as well?
No, an unformed road is essentially the colloquial term for an unformed road is a paper road.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sayers. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, just two questions. The local board views, you said that the roading exchange policy is consistent with local board delegated authority. So is roading exchange part of, can you just clarify who's got the delegated authority for roading exchange? Because I read that it's local board.
No, there's a number of decisions that have to be made, and I must stress that the prerequisite decision that needs to be made is that the road will be stopped prior to us considering a land exchange within the road. But disposal of the land itself requires AT board approval. It then is submitted to council, who then have the responsibility, I think through Panuku, to dispose of the land on the market in a normal situation. And this is the process subsequent to the road stopping decision to stop a road. How do we exchange for it? What value does it have when it goes to a developer? And do we have compensation for them? And the local boards don't have delegations within that, to the best of my understanding.
No, I didn't think so either. I didn't read it like that. And my second question is, when you swap one road for another, the road naming policy guidelines that are local board delegation, you don't necessarily swap the name for the name? You start again, is that correct?
The whole consideration of the road naming would be a local board or council and local board function. Auckland Transport's completely excluded from that process.
Yeah, that's what I was just checking. I just didn't want one name to go with another.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Sure. I've just got a question around what amounts to a road, and if I give you a hypothetical example, we've got say a paper road. The paper road happens to be in the wrong place, and yes, there is some merit in having some form of exchange, but rather than have a road, it's more appropriate in terms of movement of people as a cycleway or a walkway or a combined cycleway walkway. Does that still constitute as a road?
This applies to roads as defined in the Section 315 of the Local Government Act, and I believe it would include those pieces of land, if they are road in terms of that definition.
So you're pretty sure on that? Okay, because my vote's largely contingent on that.
Were you satisfied with the answer?
Well, I'm relying on the officer.
There are what we call local purpose reserves held for road purposes, which are not road in terms of the definition.
But are they intended to be reserved?
Don, I wonder if you could give us some examples of those, just to put it in context. Would that be maybe road ends that run to the coast, but they're actually...
No,
they are still...
most roads are identified in the LINZ database as roads, if they are road, but there are segments of land that are held as, it's quite complicated, and Penny's laughing because she knows, that are held as local purpose reserves intended for road purposes at some time in the future, but they are administered under the Reserves Act, not under the Local Government Act as roads. So they are identified totally separately. Council has title to those. Those don't form part of the transport system that we administer.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to advance it? No. Answered. Thank you. And Councillor Casey?
Auckland Transport does own the roads, but they own them on behalf of the people of Auckland. Just always put that up there.
Councillor Casey, if I could correct you, Auckland Council owns the road. Auckland Transport controls and manages the road.
No, you've got in the sentence here, I'll read you out, it says here, AC and AT own and control roads in the Auckland region. I'm correcting you. That was not what I wanted to comment on, though. Do we know where all the paper roads are, both those under the control of Auckland Council and those under the control of Auckland Transport? Have you got a big map somewhere of all the paper roads? Because I remember various times discovering paper roads that nobody knew about.
It's still
I
discovered.
couldn't guarantee 100% that we have an inventory of all paper roads, but they are mapped on the Geographic Information System, and there's also Walking and Cycling New Zealand, which have done extensive mapping of all the paper roads in New Zealand.
So how many paper roads would be under the control of Auckland Council and Auckland Transport?
All paper roads within the Auckland region would fall part of the transport system and are under the control of Auckland Transport.
Right, and then just following on for Councillor Simpson's question about where local boards come into this process, I listened carefully to your answer, but it just seemed to me that local boards come in quite near the end of the process. They're responsible for placemaking, and the local roads you're talking about are in their domain, and yet they seem to not be part of the process until it's all done and dusted.
We always consult with the local boards, but in terms of the delegations, which is what my answer was around, who's delegated the responsibility, it's not the local boards.
No, I understood that, but you didn't understand the question, which was, because you're delegated, if you want to use the proper word, you're delegated the responsibility, what assurance can you give me that local boards who are responsible for local placemaking are consulted at an early stage and not at the end of the process when you've done and dusted it?
It depends on the nature of the application, but generally, and again, our processes include consultation with the local board at an early stage.
Okay.
Generally.
Thank you, Councillor. I've got a couple of questions, Don, and it follows up on a point that something that Councillor Casey did read, and I read that also, and that was under context, the first bullet point that Auckland Council and AT own the roads, and of course you've reminded us that it's the council whole that owns the roads. But then we go down to 5 at the bottom of that page. The disposal of the land requires Auckland Transport Board and Auckland Council Committee, the governing body, approvals to dispose. Now there appears to be an inconsistency there. If Auckland Council is the owner, surely it should be the one and only entity that actually votes on the disposal, while I can appreciate Auckland Transport would consider the application for road stopping, etc. So can you just explain to me why Auckland Council body as a whole would make a decision on disposal, which is the owner? Auckland Transport, which is not the owner, should be voting on actual disposal. And what would happen if one entity voted one way and another entity voted another way? It just seems a bit odd. I guess the crux of it for me is surely that Auckland Council is the owner and should be the entity that has the only vote on disposal.
So the Local Government Auckland Act prescribes the process for disposal of land and roads, and I haven't got it in front of me, but my recollection of that is that Auckland Council may only and must dispose of land if Auckland Transport requests it. So I'm putting it in a précis, but I don't have the clause of the Local Government Auckland Council Act in front of me, but essentially it prescribes the procedure for disposal of land, and the first requirement is that Auckland Transport makes a decision, and Council may not make a decision until Auckland Transport has made a request to it.
Okay, so do those words reflect that then? So it's a recommendation from Auckland Transport to Auckland Council to dispose?
Yeah, the normal process is we would scrutinise a road, whether it's needed or surplus to requirements. We would then, and we have done in the last year, we did $60 million worth of land we transferred to Auckland Council and Panuku to dispose of. So once we've declared it surplus, it's returned to Auckland Council to make the decision to dispose of it via Panuku.
Okay, so you're saying that the words under 5 stand as they are, they meet the requirements. Over the page under core principles, there's an interesting, the first bullet point there I find very interesting, and it's good to see, that the proposal must not just provide public benefit, and then there are a list of public benefits under, but it's to provide significant public benefit. So how do you ascertain significant? Is it the combination of some of those bullet points?
Generally, that would be the case, that it's more than just any one of those situations. It's a combination of measurable benefit over and above the value of the land, and because some of those things are fairly difficult to quantify, it would have to be a significant, perceptible difference in value.
Okay, and then the last bullet point in those public benefits, this is something that I probably have a little bit of concern about. I agree with all the words there, but in my view, it's more than just public access to. It's actually public access to and use of. For me, and I'm just wondering if there would be a willingness to amend that. Look, I'm in the committee's hands as well. It's not just about connectivity, it's actually about the use that access provides. Do you have any comment on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have a problem. I viewed access as being more encompassing than purely getting to it. It's also access to utilise it.
Yeah.
But
so I have come across this.
Yeah.
I have come across this in a regulatory matter where because the words use were not there, the access agreement was challenged and it was lost.
Yeah, I'm quite
so-
happy to add in more.
Is the
and I don't
committee,
know.
is the committee agreeable?
Yep.
Yeah.